Hieronymous invited Daniel to tea on the Sunday after freshman initiation was over, complete with a silver teapot, scones, and thick pastry cubes of miniature beef Wellingtons. I had never had a beef Wellington until I met Hieronymous, but I could say that they might have become one of my new favorite foods. Still, I helped myself to a scone to nibble on as he and Daniel talk. "So," Hieronymus says as they appraise each other, "although Tori is responsible for most of your care, I told your parents I will look after you, which makes these meetings necessary. Tell me, how are your studies progressing?" "Everything's going okay, I guess," Daniel replies with a shrug. Hieronymus sips his tea as he fishes around for a new topic of conversation. "This week you have experienced the hallowed Iris Academy tradition of freshman initiation. What did you think of it?" "I don't want to think about it," Daniel says. "It's over and done with." "You have, at least, taken no permanent harm," Hieronymus replies. "You should inform your parents of such when next you contact them." "I thought you and Tori were contacting them," Daniel asks as he looks between us. "Do you think they would entrust their only son's welfare entirely to us without verification?" Hieronymus asks. "They expect to hear from you." "All right," he replies, and seems to wrestle with himself before continuing. "Sir, can I ask you a question?" Hieronymus raises an eyebrow but says nothing as he sips his tea. "Club sign-ups are on Wednesday. Am I able to join a lot of clubs and still be class president?" Hieronymus contemplates this for a moment. "You wish to be class president, knowing the attention you'll invite on yourself?" "That's exactly what Tori said," Daniel says with a sigh. Hieronymus glances over at me, and I can't help but grin at him. Maybe we had already been married long enough that we started thinking alike. "My parents expect me to take on a leadership role, though, don't they?" "It could be beneficial to your future pursuits," Hieronymus admits. "But to answer your question, there is no limit to the number of activities you can partake in. Take in as much or as little that Iris Academy has to offer during your stay here. It makes no difference to me." Daniel glances over at me. "I know that only the freshmen vote for the freshman class president, but do you think you can help me prepare?" I can't help but beam at him. "If it's what you want, and you're not only doing this for your parents, then yes, I'll help you in whatever way I can. I think I still have some supplies lying around that you can use for my last campaign, too." Hieronymus frowns as he looks over at me. "While it's admirable to be assisting Daniel with his campaign, don't neglect your own, Tori. The votes were extremely close last year." I suddenly remember that I'd only won by a single vote. Ellen seemed to think that Hieronymus had cast the deciding vote because the votes were tied, but I had never asked him about it. I do remember, though, thinking that Hieronymus had somehow rigged the vote in my favor. I spent a lot of time wondering if I won the position fairly, but at the time, I couldn't fathom that Hieronymus would favor me more than anyone else. Now that I had my memories back and remembered that we were married, it suddenly made a lot more sense. "Oh, I don't know if I'm going to run for treasurer this year," I say with a shrug of my shoulders. Hieronymus' nostrils flare in anger, and I quickly put down the scone that I had been nibbling on. "You're dismissed, Mr. Callister," Hieronymus says as he turns to him, and Daniel is already out of his seat before I have time to look up. Hieronymus waits until the door is shut behind him before he turns his attention back to me. "What do you mean you're not going to run?" "Well, I didn't exactly win fairly last year, did I?" I ask. "You only wanted me to win so you could keep a closer eye on me." "I told you that you won by one vote," Hieronymus replies. "I counted the ballots by hand to make sure. I would have rigged the vote in your favor if I had needed to, but you did win fairly, Tori." "Huh. Well, at least that put that question to rest." "But that was last year," I point out. "No one knew that we were married then. If I run now, everyone is going to assume I won because you made it so." Hieronymous contemplates this for a moment. I can ask Potsdam to count the ballots in front of everyone. This way you can see for yourself that you'll win by your own merits. I shift uncomfortably in my chair. But I don't want to run, I say quietly. I glance up, but Hieronymous is just staring at me like I've grown a third head. I just mean, I liked being treasurer before because it meant I got to spend more time with you. But now that we're married and I see you all the time, I was hoping maybe I could use my Saturday mornings to actually, sleep. Hieronymous stares at me for a moment longer before he shakes his head. We all have our responsibilities, Tori. For what it's worth, I want you to run. There are worse things than a few hours of missed sleep. But it doesn't have to be my responsibility, I reply. I already did it for 2 years. Wouldn't it be more fair to just give someone else a turn? You already know how to perform your duties adequately, Hieronymous responds, frustration growing in his voice. Do you think I have the time to worry about explaining all the rules and procedures to yet another student? I shrug. I mean, Jacob's pretty smart. I don't think you'll have to worry about it too much. Mr. Blazing has already expressed his intention to be running for secretary, he replies. I'm not asking you to win, Tori. I'm asking you to try. But I'm asking, why should I try to win a position I don't want? I ask, and a tense silence descends between us. I can't find the words to express why I don't want to be treasurer anymore, and he can't seem to find the words to explain why he wants me to resume the post so badly. Because I'm asking you to, Hieronymous replies. I want you to do it. Do it for me. All right, I reply, only because I just want to stop having this conversation. All right, if I have no choice, then I guess I'll do it. Hieronymous just sighs as he shakes his head. You will thank me for this later, Tori. I don't answer. Honestly, I couldn't imagine how being treasurer would be beneficial to my future. If anything, Minnie did so much planning and organizing that it barely felt like I did anything at all. Maybe it would look good on a resume, but what practical experience could I actually learn from tucking money into envelopes and delivering packages? So, Daniel seems to be getting along well, I say in an attempt to change the subject. Or as well as he can, anyway. He doesn't seem to have made any friends. Hieronymous raises an eyebrow. I thought you were his friend. I mean, his own age, I bristle. I mean, he seems like he's doing well in his studies, but he can learn magic anywhere. I thought he came for the real American student experience, and it feels like he's missing out. Hieronymous pauses for a moment before he sighs and shakes his head. If he is Tori, then it's up to him to make connections on his own. As I understand it, you have already attempted to foster social connections. If he chooses not to pursue them, then that's his choice. Hieronymous closes his eyes and shakes his head. It would do you well to remember that he may be hesitant to form social connections, considering he will no longer be here next year. That's true, I admit, but he can still write to them. Just because he lives on another side of the world doesn't mean he can't have a pen pal or two. Hieronymous just shakes his head. You might find as you get older, Tori, that people grow apart. The friends that you have now may not still be your friends as you grow apart and pursue your own interests. I know he's talking about Ellen and Virginia, but I can't help but take it the wrong way as I cross my arms over my chest. Some people grow together, you know. Just because people get older doesn't always mean they grow apart. Some people can recognize that they're changing and that their friendships are changing and still keep up the friendship regardless. A small smile pulls at the corner of his lips as he shakes his head. I wasn't talking about us, Tori. I cross my arms over my chest and huff. I know you weren't, but my point still stands. Neither of us have really done well in the friend department, and if that changes, it changes, but I'm not going to force it. You can't force people to like each other or become friends. It has to happen naturally. My roommates and I have been through a lot together, so we'll always have that to fall back on, but it's hard to make friends with people who don't understand what I've been through. They shouldn't have to. That's not my point, but... I shake my head. I suddenly lost my sense of focus. I understand, Hieronymous says quietly. True friendships are difficult to form authentically, and authenticity cannot be achieved without trust. However, considering the experiences that you went through the past year, it can be difficult for you to trust your own instincts in this regard. It feels wrong to bond with someone over trauma, I say as I shift from foot to foot, but I feel like I'm never going to be able to make friends with someone who doesn't understand what I went through. Not all friendships have to be as deep and meaningful as the few you've already managed to create, Hieronymous continues. Admittedly, this was one of the reasons I decided to prolong our connection. I was oblivious to the ways you were starting to close yourself off from others, and I was afraid that your experiences would only make you more reticent to form new friendships. I can't help but shrug. I know you think of me as a social person, but I'm really not. I'm friendly with people, but that has more to do with my demeanor, I think. You're not a friendly person, and that's okay. You don't have to be. But I do sort of like the way that it's just us. Damien only attacked me because he was trying to tear us apart, but honestly, I don't know if I would have been able to keep us together if it hadn't happened. Hieronymous can't help but shake his head as he chuckles lightly to himself. We would be, I'm sure. Remember that we were only able to pursue a relationship due to your efforts the night of the May Day ball. And then, when you returned to school, you insisted on honoring your vows and seeing where this relationship led us. The struggles that we endured may have helped to deepen our bond, but never assume that we wouldn't be standing where we are now if that hadn't happened. I just shake my head as I step forward and wrap my arms around his middle. Hieronymous wraps his arms around me and buries his nose in my hair, holding me tightly to him. Hieronymous and I may have been bonded by trauma and marred by a tragedy that was too difficult for people to understand, but that didn't mean that was the only thing that was keeping us together. We had a respect for one another. We appreciated each other's strengths, and we worked to bring out the best in each other. We loved each other. That was true as well, but we put in the time and the work to make sure that our relationship was the best that it could be, and that was why we were still together. That was why we would never grow apart.